Hi, guys. This is Dr. Scott Young. And so today I want to talk to you about the money crisis and the three-letter death of the agencies. It's so fascinating. I do want to talk to you a little bit about Revelations of the Red Pill, that what you might consider as we get closer and closer to this crazy thing that I say it's not really about an election. It's about sometimes it's about an IQ test, but it is some crazy things that are occurring. The deep state is dying, and they're dying in every single way. But as we get close to that circumstance, I think we're really close to the situation all changing at once. So I think post Nasara, post EBS, what happens to that time frame? The people around you are really going to struggle, and that book might help you, Revelations of the Red Pill, to kind of know how you might present to your friends and family about what happens afterward. And especially on the back end, when they finally do believe you, it can help you with that too. So you can go to drscottyoung.com and you can find that book with that too. Okay, so let's do a video first, and then we'll jump into the PowerPoint that will help you understand some things. This is hysterical with this. Watch this one.
Concerned are you about the potential impact of the dollar's status as the world reserve currency?
Think about that for a second. I mean, now you could say, well, that was just a fortuitous bounce. The woman is asking a question. I do believe this was in China. Don't quote me for sure. But what they were, whether or not it was in China or near the Treasury area, it's not really relevant. She's got the Department of Treasury thing in front of her, and she says, "How concerned are you about the dollar and its ability to sustain the position?" And the Treasury thing falls at the same time. You might say, well, that's just too coincidental. God's trying to share something with you of what is going on in the background here. And we just need to be listening with that too. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this. The money crisis everywhere while the government's about to change with that too. I've told people over and over again, if you see people asking you for QFS crypto, or do you have your account with it, block and delete. I had someone I happened to follow on Twitter, and literally minutes later they sent me a long diatribe about the XRP account. I said, thank you so much for sending that to me. Now I know that you really aren't the same person, and you're a freaking scammer, and helped me to block and delete you. So just do that with these idiots. Okay, let me show you something that's happening around the situation, that the total deficit is 1.83 trillion right now. I mean, to get an idea of how bad that is, it's like saying that the payroll taxes that the government gets, which, by the way, the IRS is that payroll tax point, right? And that payroll tax issue would go directly toward just the deficit. So it's an offset right here. And then the individual tax returns that people are paying less and less, by the way, over the last while, can't even cover some of the basics out there, including interest payments. And they say $950 billion a year. I think it's over $1 trillion right now. That's the latest answer. These people are just running so far, and there's only so long that they can go, because that debt train is dying, and it's dying quickly. Argentina shut down its tax agency. Now, Malay is actually such a fascinating character. Judy Shelton, in her book, Good as Gold, talked a lot about him and how he has been ripping away the capabilities of the government. And he's got 3,000 agents that are just going to be gone. The expansion of the agencies went up by 35% over the last 15, 20 years. And yet the expansion of their economy was only up by 3%. There were multiples of 200 or 300% of growth of inflation over a very short time frame with that too. They tried to come up with a new dollar and go with the dollar as the dollarization point, and they had to back off of that. Well, there's a reason why he backed off. It's because they know something's coming, and it's a really cool thing that's about ready to come. And this is the way this is going to be for all of the nations in the Jasara nations. BRICS is Jasara, okay, and that's the global structure that's going to happen. Now, this isn't a global agency like Mark of the Beast stuff. This is sovereign to each nation. And that's what messes up the central bankers. They're freaking out because they want to be in charge of it, and they have no ability to be in league with this stuff, right? So they're getting messed with every single time with that. The small business uncertainty unit, I kind of circled a couple of these areas, have always happened in crazy timeframes. Normally they happen around election timeframes. Now, here's a one point that happens right after Clinton gets into office a second time. Now, it's funny that it didn't occur here when Clinton was first in office with that too. But these spikes show up a little bit after some of these elections. And two of the major spikes happened right when Trump got in, because most of the small business had no idea what was going on because he was outside of the realms. And we were getting all kinds of statements saying that, he might be bad for, the economy or bad for different circumstances. So people were hearing that, and they didn't understand what was happening. Now, in 2020, the only reason why this happened is because Biden was in there, and he was definitely not going to help you out. But look at the spike that's happened right now. It's higher than ever before. That is a bad sign for, the voting public who are most of the normies with that too. They're not for the idiots with that. The Treasury bond market, which is the only way that they can keep the dollar in its dominant phase, which is why Yellen had her little little thing, is that it is going down the tubes so fast, it's almost startling. It's at levels that were, even right here, it's at levels that were in about 97. That no one's spending money with the Treasury bond. This is what keeps the dollar in dominance throughout the world. And by the way, it's dying every time I turn around. It's so low. It's even lower, actually lower than 97. It's more like in the late 90s, or excuse me, early 90s, late 80s with that too, where it is right now. And this is obviously a projection issue if it stayed the same. And we know it's not going to stay the same with that. They are just losing it. This is part of their liquidity. This is how they have money. And then you say, how can they keep spending? Just the other day, today's the November 3rd, and just the other day they sent another $425 million to Ukraine. They just keep sending money like drunken sailors with that too, right? The public debt to net interest payment is at an all-time high and higher than every single one of the nations out there. You see, we do have to flip this thing, okay? We have to flip this in several different ways, but this is an unpayable debt. And I talked to a whole bunch of people in Dallas area when I went down to Jay Capriati's church, and it's called Essentials Church down in Dallas area or Fort Worth area. So check it out if you're down there with that. And the reality is, people were saying, I just had one little change in my life. Maybe an escrow moved up in the payments and added $350 a month. He goes, man, that just tipped me over. And I've heard so many stories like that. And it's these unpayable debts will come and bite us, and they're about ready to bite everyone with that too. I mean, the media keeps telling you one story, and yet the economy is saying something different. And that's why there's a disconnect. I talked with a friend of mine named John, and John, if you're listening, I hope you're listening, but he told me he was really mad about everything. He's a very good conservative guy, real cool guy. And he's just super mad when he was working on me the other day with that too. And I was like, dude, where do you listen to your stuff? Well, I turn on the news and I bounce between like 6 different channels. He's not getting the real story. He's getting the media story versus the truth here. And that's the problem that we're seeing here all the way around with that stuff too. Let me show you a couple things that I find fascinating. You're going to see 2 different types of clips out there that show you some interesting stuff. So let me show you, this one was with Fox and Friends. So again, don't listen to Fox either, but the clip is fascinating with it too.
Never been about everybody's health before. Why would he be about it now?
What President Trump did after I made that agreement with him is he's kept his word about everything so far. He did things that I didn't ask him to do. He put me on the transition team. Most transition teams don't start to the day of the election because they're paid for by the GAO. And what President Trump said to me is he said, last time in 2016, I came into office and I had no idea how to govern. And I was immediately surrounded the day after the election with all these big corporate people and corporate lobbyists. And they said, appoint this guy, appoint that guy. And he said, I did it. And they were a bunch of bad people. That was, you know how he says bad people?
Yes.
Well, that's what he said. People like John Bolton and the head of NSA and all of these other people, corporate lobbyists who came in and ran our agencies, which I was a huge critic of. And he said, I'm not doing that this time. I care about my legacy. I want to leave a country that's healthier. This is an existential threat to the American people. And he said, I want to end it, and I want to leave as my legacy to the American people the end of the chronic disease epidemic and make us, again, like when I was a boy, the healthiest nation in the world.
Listen to this one.
To reorganize the federal health agencies, the agencies that have a portfolio that affects human health, which is CDC, NIH, FDA, as well as some of the agencies within the United States Department of Agriculture. And he's asked me to clean up the corruption, number one. Number two, end the conflicts of interest, return those agencies to their rich tradition of.
Okay, listen to what he's telling you here. RFK is going to come in and run the CDC, FDA, NIH, and probably several other division points. That is a destruction of the 3-letter agencies. Do you guys catch how cool that is? The 3-letter agencies, you know, these things have run in horrid levels. They're so bloated and they're so anti-American in so many different ways. And one guy is going to run at least 3 different agencies. He's going to rip them down just exactly like Elon Musk said. And he's going to rip them down to levels where Elon, when he came in, bought it up for $44 billion, and he's got it 20% of the original staff. Watch what will happen. Because some of the idiots that tell you that, you know, the IRS taxation, we won't have enough money to run the government. Yeah, when you start stripping away all the fat off of it, you'll see so much fat, it'll startle you. The reality of 80% strip down is exactly what we need to see with that. And so and that's part of the constitutional law. That's part of the NASARA stuff here, guys. Let me finish it up here.
Gold standard, empirically based evidence.
He just said gold standard in relation to that. That is a com of comms all the way through and through.
Based science, evidence-based medicine, and to end the chronic disease epidemic in this country. And he's asked me specifically to measurably reduce chronic disease in our children within 2 years.
So let's deal with concerns about you and then concerns about him. The concern about you, there are people who will say you are an extremist and that they are concerned about what you would do with that kind of power in government. What do you say to people, whether it's about the vaccines or what they believe about you personally, that they have concerns about you, what you would do with that power?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. I've written 5 best-selling books on public health, so I know, and I've litigated on public health for 40 years. and won some of the biggest lawsuits in our nation's history on public health issues. My job is to really, what I have an expertise in is addressing corruption. I've sued almost all of these agencies. I've sued FDA, CDC, NIH, FCC, the USDA, almost all these agencies. When you litigate against these agencies, you get a PhD in corporate capture and how to unravel it. So my portfolio and my charge is going to be to end the corruption of those agencies and let them do real science again. And then not to impose my personal choices or beliefs on the American people, but give them information that they can make their beliefs. We're a free country. People ought to have a choice about their own health, and they ought to have the best knowledge.
So in essence, what he's talking about, and he just said he's going to have at least 3 agencies, probably the USDA. He kind of mentioned that one as well. He's going to he's going to make people healthy again, probably by what they eat. He is going to and do that within 2 years. I mean, that is a big turnaround in your body with that too. And that is his mandate with that kind of thing too. On top of that, he sued all those agencies, so they're going to be terrified. He's going to rip them down to the utter bones of that. And then he said, used the statement of gold standard. I mean, gold standard is a calm for the Fed being under a gold standard. A gold standard, when you say gold standard, that means the top standard of capabilities, right? And it directly ties to having our money being sound, which is in essence of Nasara. I mean, it's how we do that. It's how we destroy the Fed. The 17th letter said, gold will destroy the Fed. And having a gold standard along with agencies wiping down to their core because they haven't done anything. You might be terrified of that. It's actually going to, give the people the information and back off and go after corporate corruption. And he's talking about corporate corruption because guess what the US government is? A corporation. And it's being deleted as we speak. Be excited, guys. This thing is getting ripped to the core, and it's going to be really good for you. Thanks so much.